Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 151. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Winstead. From a challenging rural upbringing, Justin transformed adversity into a springboard for success. After college, he worked in student ministry and church planting before launching into business endeavors, including oil and gas, real estate, and a multi-million-dollar insurance agency. With over 20 years in business and leadership, and as a cancer survivor, Justin's journey epitomizes the power of faith, purpose, and vision. Passionate about personal growth with the goal of serving others, he's committed to enriching people through his insights. As an executive coach, workshop facilitator, keynote speaker, and the founder of Improver Group, Justin aims to make the world a better place by helping leaders, entrepreneurs, and their teams improve personally and professionally. Justin has a new book titled Become an Improver, a challenge to escape average and unleash greatness. The book will be released October 1st, available wherever books are sold. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Justin, so glad to have you on the show today.
Man, you did fantastic with the intro, and so good to be here. Thanks, Naftali. Excited about our conversation.
My pleasure. I'm excited as well. It was a great intro to read through, a lot to unpack, but why don't we let you do the real talking here? Tell us about your story, your backstory, so to speak, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll just say that those who are listening and watching, you're trying to figure out this accent, like, where is this guy? And I'm originally from Louisiana and I live in Texas now. So if you mix country boy, Cajun boy, and Texas twang together, this is what you get. So
really? Add a little margarita to that one.
So yeah, I was raised in rural Northeast Louisiana in a small agricultural community. My early upbringing shaped a lot of who I am today, obviously, just like all of us. And part of my backstory just includes the fact that life was difficult for us. My dad was a high school dropout. My mom worked in the public school system, and I had siblings. And there was a lot of hard work, a lot of compassion, a lot of family values, but there was not a lot of money or financial literacy. And there was a lot of struggling and striving to just get by in life. One of my earliest memories was looking through the floor of the trailer house that we lived in, and I could see the ground underneath, and we actually had a snake come in the house. And I remember the rain coming, and we'd get buckets and bowls to keep the house from flooding. And so to fast forward to today, where I'm living in Colleyville, Texas, and I've got this $1 million home. It's like, how did I get from there to here? And that's kind of the journey that I'm excited to unpack for you today on the call. But the worldview that I had growing up was that there are the haves and the have-nots, and I was on the have-nots side of thing. I realized that other people seemed to have it together, and they wore the right clothes, said the right things, played the right sports. That's where they were, and I longed to be in a better spot, but I just felt stuck. So I projected. I kind of had this way of trying to come across smarter and stronger and more athletic than I actually was. Because of those insecurities, I developed a mindset that money is bad, rich people are evil, and if you were successful in business, you must have cheated your way to get there. And that was some of my coping mechanisms. So I thought, well, what am I going to be when I grow up? As a middle schooler, high schooler, I've got all this weird mindset baggage I'm carrying around and trying to chart my future. And it was about that time that I learned about Christianity. I became a Christian, and I kind of decided, this is real life. And it almost reinforced my preconceived notions, because there's so many things about the love of money being the root of all evil, and so many things about giving and sacrificing and the humble. And I thought, well, this is right. And so I went into the Christian ministry, and that's what I thought my life was supposed to be about. I thought it was supposed to be about serving in the church, working in the nonprofit world, and that was the trajectory I was on. Fast forward a few years, I did have a bout with cancer while I was working on my undergrad. So I'm in college dealing with chemotherapy, radiation. I was able to power through that and then able to graduate. I took a few business classes in college, but I was still pretty ignorant about business, leadership, sales, but I was growing. I moved to Texas to finish out my master's degree in seminary and told my family, I'll be back to Louisiana next year as soon as I get my degree done, and got out here and really felt a pull to go into the business world that I had been thumbing my nose up at. I remember just saying, I'll never sit in an air-conditioned office and get behind a desk or a computer. And, I just looked down on people who did that. And here I was feeling this draw. And the whisper that was on the inside was, you can make a greater impact. You can have greater influence, and you want to serve people and minister to them. You can have a greater ministry by going and creating more margin and by creating more influence and lifting others up. You'll have a better chance to actually serve people. And so I ran straight into the area of my fear, ended up doing some real estate and oil and gas endeavors. Of course, a lot of us get involved in some type of multi-level marketing thing when we're trying to scale up our sales ability, and I fell into that as well. But where I really kind of found my footing was building an insurance agency, built that up, had a team of producers, and sold it a couple of years ago. And the way that I built that agency was in part by doing workshops, by coaching my referral partners, by empowering others, taking all of the skills that I did in ministry and bringing those into the marketplace, and even event planning was how I grew it. And it kind of hit me one day that, wait, I feel like I'm supposed to combine these two areas of my life. Let me empower people with truth, mindset, work with them on hard issues, thinking about their big purpose in life, but also how can they win in business and create margins and have profit and have more bandwidth emotionally, financially, with their time and energy. And so that's what my life is about now. So that's what the Improver Group exists to do, is take people who feel stuck, take people who feel like they've been dealt a bad hand, or that maybe they don't have all the answers or resources, but desire a different trajectory. They desire an improved life. And so that's my heartbeat, and that's my story.
Wow. A lot to unpack there. Let me ask you, just focusing on that last part, if I may, for a minute.
Yeah.
So let's walk through that improvement process a little bit, because, different people obviously come to you or come to any coach with different issues. Everybody's unique in that regard. For the most part, what are the main challenges that people are coming to you with? And what's your process to get them from this area of stuck, as you described it, to a new mindset, a new way of thinking, and of course, taking purposeful action? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I love that you used the word mindset because that's a big part of where we have to begin. Because where most people come to me is there's typically a symptom in their life or business that they are unhappy with, or that's causing them pain or discomfort. And they're looking externally at, why am I feeling this, or why can't I accomplish this, or why is my revenue down, why is my turnover high? And so they're looking outwardly to try to find the culprit. In the first place we have to start is by looking at the person in the mirror, because that's our biggest challenge. And so, I dealt a lot with mortgage brokers and loan officers and real estate agents. And, the common thing among those who were struggling was always blaming the market, blaming the conditions, blaming the rates. And I thought, the real issue is what's between your ears. The real issue is your mindset. And so helping people lovingly take a step back and say, I can't control the world. I can't control who's going to get elected in a few months. I can't control what the investors of the markets are doing. But what can I control? And let me focus on that. For people to change their reality and their results, they have to change their habits and processes. To change the habits and processes, you have to change individual actions and components. To change those, you have to change your attitudes and beliefs, which all start with changing your mindset. So if you want to improve your situation, you have to identify what are the symptoms? Yes, but what is the root cause of that as it relates to my mindset and perspective? So we have assessments that we can walk people through, and some of it's just discovery conversations to figure out which part of their mindset needs some tweaking. We begin there with self-awareness, and then we move into self-discipline. And then we move into, now that you have self-awareness and self-discipline, how do we use that to lead others, whether it's customers, team members, what have you? And then we can start getting to the impact that we want to have.
I'm hearing a lot of habit one in Stephen Covey. It's
Yes.
interesting because with my mastermind group, we're actually now up to habit two. So we just started not that long ago, which is begin with the end in mind. But the first one is be proactive. And
Yes.
you talk about your circle of concern and circle of influence and whatnot. And oftentimes we're very focused on the things that we control the least. And so, and we do a lot of blame. And so between that focus and that blame, we sort of give ourselves an excuse to not be performing. But if you live a life without excuses, if you live a life where you say, I'm ultimately the one who's responsible, whether it's for bringing income for my family, for improving the condition around me, for making my workplace and work culture better and more positive, instead of saying so-and-so has a terrible attitude and so-and-so just doesn't, get it, whatever it is. You talked about modeling, right? Getting your own stuff together first, figuring it out on your own, being an example for other people. So there's a lot there really, I think, for anyone in leadership to understand that if you take responsibility, you serve as a good example, you constantly are solution oriented towards the issues around you, you're going to get a lot more done and feel a lot better than if you just live a life of default.
Yes. And that default mindset, that default life is a state of reactivity. It is a state of either drift, where you're just being carried away by whatever, or maybe you're trying to resist the drift, but you're still doing it in a reactive, moment by moment. One of the things that's really, I think, underappreciated with high impact people and highly successful people is their ability to just get control of the things that they can control and to be intentional, forward thinking, and not just be in a moment by moment. The average person, when we talk about escaping average, the average person is just living day by day, paycheck to paycheck, week to week, or month to month. As people begin to mature, some of them will start thinking year to year. And so they'll actually get serious about a resolution or an annual goal. And then you get people who start thinking, well, I got to start thinking bigger than that. I got to think a few years out. But those people who think decade to decade, and they're imagining their legacy, and they're imagining how do they want to be remembered, and then reverse engineering that and controlling their days to day to lead to that, those are the ones who are truly living their best life.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I remember my background is in education, and I first became a school principal in my late 20s, and I became a head of school of a separate independent school in my late 30s, or maybe I was around 40 at the time. And so I was actually younger. At that time I had 10-year goals. I wanted to be this, I wanted to be that. I wanted to kind of like move up the totem pole, so to speak, within the world of education. And thankfully I was able to achieve those goals. At this point in my life, because of the fact that, there are no, quote, technically speaking, levels. You hang your shingle, you have your own coaching practice, whatever it is. It's not like you now become something higher than the boss, which you already are. So you have to think differently. You have to think in terms of other metrics, like you talked about, financial metrics, quality of life metrics. Where do you want to be physically? What kind of vacations do you want to be able to go on? How do you want to provide for your family? How do you want to provide for your community? And these are all things that with intention, you can work to. I love a quote from Tony Robbins. He says, we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in 5. And I think oftentimes if you think big and then you take those purposeful actions towards that, then you could achieve something meaningful. Now, I do want to ask you a question about your transition earlier, because I too have rabbinic ordination. So I too have a background in the equivalent, so to speak, of the ministry in a sense, a background in education, a background in religion as a primary focus area, if you will, of my life. And then like you, I transitioned out of that. I didn't go into conventional business. I moved from that straight into coaching. But I'm curious to know, because you talked about living your purpose in a different way through, connecting with people who you'd be able to better serve by being in my translation of it, if you will, was being in their space, being, operating in the business world, operating in a manner that was more almost peer to peer and have that type of influence than rather waiting for them to come to church or waiting for them to come into your sphere of religious influence and to connect with them there. So maybe unpack that for us a little bit more and talk, if you don't mind, about different ways that we could be influential without necessarily grabbing a megaphone, without necessarily having a formal title, without being the keynote speaker at a large corporate event. What are ways that people in any type of leadership role, formal or informal, can expand their sphere of influence?
That is a fantastic question. And there's a couple of things that come to mind. One of them is a movie that I was watching during this transformative phase of my life was Batman Begins. So I'm watching this is an incredible movie, but as a boy, young Bruce Wayne falls into this, I think it was a well, and these bats come out and fly all over, and that's where he develops this phobia of bats, was this traumatic experience, as a young person. As he grows into adulthood, he has a series of things that happen that cause him to want to fight evil and to be a catalyst for good in the world. But as he goes through his training, his mentor tells him, if you truly want to be a hero, you have to overcome your fear. You can't let your fear hold you back. And so Batman does do that. Bruce Wayne ends up overcoming his fear of bats on the way to becoming a hero. But he doesn't just plant his flag and then move on with life and say, okay, I defeated bats, let me just go be some hero. That becomes his symbol. It's a daily reminder of what he's overcome, of his fear. And that's kind of what I felt like I was being called into is, Justin, as a young boy, you had these experiences that cause you to be afraid, and then you're carrying those with you. But if you really want to be that ultimate change for good in the world, you're going to have to overcome your fear. And then not only are you going to overcome it, but you're going to wear that. So when you ask the question, how does someone become, influential, whether that means stages or whether that means their immediate circles that they walk in, one part begins with facing your fear and overcoming self-limiting beliefs and overcoming those nagging thoughts that are holding you back. No one is influential to another person when they have the wall of self-preservation between them and the other person. So when you throw up this wall of self-preservation because you're afraid of losing something, you're trying to hide something, you're trying to prove something, when you've got all these selfish motives, you're never going to be able to influence. Influential people figure out a way to serve those that they're trying to influence. So you have to drop that wall down. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other one that comes to mind is a book that I was reading during that transformation period. And the book was The Gutter by Craig Gross. And Craig Gross and his wife and some friends, they started a church on the Vegas Strip. And they actually had a ministry where they would go in and reach out to those that were caught in the adult sex industry and were feeling in bondage to that career choice, but didn't know how to get out. So they would go in and serve these people and try to help them find a different career path and way of life. Well, one of the ways they did that was they would rent out booth space in these large porn conventions that were happening, and they would set up right in the middle, and they would pass up the preachers in the three-piece suit outside the convention that were waving their Bibles in people's faces and having zero impact. They would pass them up, go set up the booth, and give away creative merchandise that would start conversations, and they just served and loved the people. And I remember reading that going, that's what I feel like I'm supposed to do. I don't think I'm supposed to go to porn conventions, but I do feel like I'm supposed to go into the boardroom and the conference room, and I'm not supposed to go in wagging my Bible and pointing my finger, but I'm supposed to go in and serve and love and create meaningful conversations and try to have a positive influence. And so overcoming your own fear and self-preservation and then choosing to go into whatever your gutter is, whatever your place of humility has to be, where you're looking to serve others.
I love both answers. I particularly resonate with the first one. I think it speaks a little bit to my own story of maybe being young, maybe feeling a little bit vulnerable, certainly succeeding somebody who had been in the school for a long time and hired everybody and was kind of very well established. For me to maybe be a little bit too strong, maybe a little bit too unrelatable at the beginning, and not taking the time to get to know everybody better, and also to be vulnerable, to be more open with people, because I think people ultimately relate, very well to that. It's kind of interesting that you use the analogy of Batman. Not that I'm a Batman fan per se over any other superhero, but I find it fascinating that of all the movies, I'm not a moviegoer, but I'm a movie observer, let's say, at least peripherally. And I see that there's like always seems to be another Batman movie coming out. All the other movies, not so much. All the other, I mean, there's different ones, but it seems like Batman gets more than almost all the others. And I kind of wonder if it's because of the fact that in many ways his story is more relatable. He's less a superhero than most superheroes. He doesn't have this unusual strength, that came from a different planet or whatever it might be. Not that I want to overanalyze here because I'm going to get out of my element real quick. But he's a regular person, so to speak. He's got his baggage. He had his horrific story as a kid, whatever that was. And now he's here to serve others with his tools and his tricks and his variety of pieces. And I think that makes it, plus the fact that he's got all sorts of colorful characters on the other side that I think make the contrast so strong. But I think that those pieces make that story in particular more compelling and relatable. And so for every leader, not everybody's going to have this crazy rags to riches story. Not everybody was raised in a mobile home or in a trailer somewhere with dripping ceilings or holes in the floor or whatever that more extreme example might be for some people. Some people were raised in, quote, regular homes and experienced regular childhoods and didn't have any kind of crazy, compelling situation that they were running from in order to become who they are today. But that doesn't mean that you don't have your own moments of insecurity, your own moments of challenge along the way, and being willing to open up to people and share that, not because you're trying to be a victim, but you're just trying to be relatable. That I think is an important piece for anyone in leadership.
Yes, I would agree with that. And yeah, your pain can be a platform, your mess can be a message. Your greatest test is your greatest testimony. And so don't waste your suffering, pay it forward. When I went through cancer, if you asked me at 20 years old, hey, would you like to have cancer? Of course, the answer is no. But if you ask me today, to get what you got by going through it, if that was the only way, would you go through it again to get that? I would say yes. If that was the only way to have the impact that I've been able to have on other people going through cancer, yes, I would do it. When I got married, it wasn't long after we got married and bought our first home. Next thing we know, my mother-in-law is moving in with us because she has cancer and we're becoming her primary caretaker. And I was so grateful for the suffering that I had endured because of the way I was able to serve her. And then now, how much more that endeared me to my wife, who was already in love with me. But now the way I took care of her mom going through cancer, it made the cancer journey for me worth it. Not everyone can say it that way, but everyone does have the opportunity to take their suffering and turn it into a story to help others.
It sure is, yeah. And that's really such an important piece, because the way I think Madison Avenue presents it, we all want, there's sort of like this end goal to life. It's that sunny island, beachfront property. It's the beautiful views. It's the relaxing, lounging out that we might do with a wonderful drink on the one side and a beautiful person on the other side, that kind of futuristic vision. But people who are happiest, I believe, and the people who are most fulfilled are the people who not only experience challenges, but continue to challenge themselves. They don't rest on their laurels. They're always looking for something more, because we're not here just to exist. We're here to grow. We're here to serve. At least that's what I believe. And I believe that
Yes.
deep down, most of us would feel similarly because we know that when we're serving, we're happiest. We know that when
Yes.
we're growing, we're happiest. It's not the destination. I've written 2 books. You're writing a book, or maybe you've written
Hmm.
more before. I'm not even sure. But oftentimes you're working towards that end goal, and you're so excited to get there. I got a doctorate, same concept. And then you finally graduate, or you finally get the book out, and it's like, now what? You know? All
Yeah.
right, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'm going to celebrate, whatever. But now, you don't feel like what's next. And
Yes.
life is always that way. So let me ask you one last question in this segment. And it's a question you may have already hit on it because you shared so much already about your personal story. But what would you say, Justin, has been your biggest mistake so far that ultimately propelled you or prepared you for future success?
Yeah, I think when I look back at the biggest mistake, and I'm trying to think of if this should be an instance sort of thing or one of these like ongoing habits of a mistake, because that's the first thing that came to my mind is I used to have this mindset of I'm thinking through things so with so much intention and so much research, and I'm working through this so logically that surely my way of viewing the world is the only correct way of viewing the world, and that was a huge mistake as a general habit that I committed for a long time, and I have to be careful to not fall into that now. Welcoming other perspectives, gathering the feedback from other people. I'm a pioneer voice according to the 5 voices kind of assessment system, and I've already been thinking about the future and trying to be a step ahead. And so I've made mistakes with people in the past way too often of not taking in their input and letting them share their perspective. One of the specific examples of that was a leadership event that we planned. It was a 6-figure investment on my part to put on this event. I brought in speakers from around the country, and we had lots of entrepreneurs and elite leaders attending. And throughout this process, I really kind of had a vision of the way I wanted this to be, and it was a great event, but it was not as great as it could have been had I been truly slowing down, listening. I put it on in a compressed time frame, and that was one of my biggest professional errors, was trying to do too much in too little time and ignoring the condition of the people that were working with me and not taking time to listen and learn about what they were experiencing.
Yeah, I guilty as charged. I think most people who hear what you said would probably have a variation of that in their story too, whether it's rushing into things or not listening enough. And look, we're all human beings. I just did a workout this morning. I mean, I exercise daily, but it's not uncommon for the people who are on the video, the trainers, to slip and fall or lose their balance or whatever it might be. We're all human beings. You could achieve a level of excellence and still struggle. So we have to forgive ourselves or give ourselves some space to continue to grow, and simultaneously look back at our successes and build off of those, because that's ultimately, going to propel us forward. So in terms of propelling forward, we're going to transition now to the rapid fire, where the answers are short and sweet. My first question to you is how to stay current and keep learning.
How to stay current and keep learning. I'm a big fan of coaching. And so to me, one of the biggest ways is connecting with someone who, when one of my workout group, we call it the whetstone blade relationship, but you're the blade, find a whetstone that keeps you sharp, and they'll help you stay evolving.
Okay, so you already hit on my next one. Importance of a coach or mentor from 1 to 10, 10 being
Okay.
highest.
Yeah, I really think it's a 10 plus on that. You gotta have somebody pouring into you.
So let me ask you this. Really, this is rapid fire. I'm going to go a little bit off
Mhm.
script here because I think a lot of people, they kind of understand the importance of a doctor. They understand the importance of a psychologist even, but for a coach or a mentor, not so much. I think a lot of people struggle to understand and almost think of it as therapy. I don't need therapy, that kind of
Mhm.
mindset. If you could say in as succinct a manner as possible, why it's so critical. I know coach and mentor are different, but
Mhm.
why are those types of people so important in people's lives?
Yeah, the three things that I aim to do whenever I coach people is I want to enlighten their mind, teach them new information, I want to encourage their hearts, and then I want to equip their hands. And so a good coach is going to do those things. And if you don't have that, you're getting the opposite experience. You're not learning some things that you could learn that would be valuable. A lot of times you're facing doubts and discouragements on your own. And then you're just lacking the resources that could help you to work smarter, more efficiently, and more effectively.
Yeah, very important and well said. Nice and succinct.
Yeah.
If you could plaster a message, Justin, on a massive billboard, right? They say everything is bigger in Texas. So let's make a supersized, Texas-sized billboard, and you could plaster a message on it. What would it say?
Yeah, it'd probably be this one that's behind my head right now on the screen where it says escape average and unleash greatness. Because that'd be the thing that I would want everyone to know is you don't have to settle for average, and that the idea of unleash greatness is the message of you've got greatness already. It's within you. You just need to unleash it. You need to let it out. And so that would be the message that I would want people to hear.
Beautiful. A quote that you live by or think about often?
Yeah, almost weekly, I probably bring up the quote, and I got it out of a Stephen Covey book, but I think it's attributed to someone else. But the quote is, most people spend their entire lives trying to climb the ladder of success as quickly as they can, only to get to the top and realize it was leaned against the wrong building.
Wrong building, yeah. Oh, but up against the wrong wall. Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
important.
up against the wrong wall.
Leadership
Yes.
and management, all of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I just
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think our culture is a lot of that. Let's just race up as fast as we can,
Mhm.
and then we get to the top, and it's not where we even wanted to be, but we were just looking next to us. So a lot of the hacks and apps and softwares are just helping us become more efficient at getting to the wrong place faster.
That's right. That's right. Now, I used to use this as just books, kind of books that you read, but if you wanted to include content that you consume, what would you say is when you're trying to learn, trying to consume, trying to kind of like just broaden your horizons, what do you focus on?
Yeah, so John Maxwell's leadership books are always amazing. My habit of reading books is dog-earing pages and then highlighting quotes after I've read through, and I go back to the dog-eared pages. But with his books, it's pointless because all the pages are dog-eared and they're all highlighted. So big John Maxwell fan. From a team culture perspective and a professional context, I'm a huge fan of the Giant Worldwide models. They create visual tools and models that are very sticky, and they kind of shift the mental paradigm, and that works really well for me because of my visual nature.
Nice. And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
Yeah, so if there was any one thing to get more done, it would be having times of reflection and direction. In other words, setting aside quarterly, weekly, and daily times to think through what's most important, what do I need to accomplish, how will I accomplish that. So I guess it's another way of just saying planning, like being intentional with your planning, being proactive, not reactive in your time.
Very important. Yeah. Okay, so how can people, Justin, reach out to you, learn more about you, find you online? What's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Justin Winstead, and then on Facebook, you can look up Improver Coach, on YouTube, Improver Coach. My website is called improvergroup.com, so you can visit that for general information about that, and you'll see other info on me. The book that you mentioned earlier, that website is improverbook.com. And so the book will be released October 1st, should be available for pre-order by the time this podcast is released. So go to improverbook.com and get your copy there.
Awesome. All right. So Justin, I've learned a lot, tremendous amount actually, but please leave us with one final life lesson to wrap up the episode.
Yeah, so when we first met on this call, you said, "How are you doing?" And I gave you our little tagline of good and getting better. And that really is a large part of my philosophy on life, is to, no matter what your situation is, look at it and go, you know what, there's always good to be found, and there's always getting better that you can do. So the lesson is gratitude and then growth. Celebrate your wins, express thanksgiving, take time to acknowledge that at the same time that you're continuing to improve. So take the good and getting better mindset.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure. So glad to have met you. So glad to have talked with you, and very excited to share this content. And of course, to point my listeners towards your book and your content as well. So thank you, Justin. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to continue the conversation over time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure now.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.